So, hello everyone, good morning and welcome to our Taste Online webinar series. I'm Cristina Reni from International Trade Center. I'm part of the Alliances for Action team, a network in the inclusive agribusiness section. So today we have Francesca Mastrovito with us, who will be joining us in this 8th session of this webinar series. This webinar series is a collaboration of ITC with Caribbean Export. I know many of you have already joined to the other 7th series, always on Thursday, so thank you very much for that. And I also wanted to thank our founders that have made this possible, which is the European Union, the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the CARI Forum, and the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office under the UK Trade Partnership Project. So that implemented many projects around the Caribbean as Alliances for Action. We're very happy to see all these food entrepreneurs and companies connecting every Thursday, as over the last year, the landscape of how to do business and how to create commercial linkages has changed and sometimes has become most of a challenge, because digital presence, how you are online, it's a lot of now how buyers, consumers, are looking at you. Last week we had a session about more the audience and content development with Francesca, who's a communication specialist and also a food writer. So many of you had the chance to meet her before, and today we're preparing another session she has prepared with us, where we would really enjoy if you can type us your questions or raise your hand if you have a comment or an example you want to share with us. We're very happy to have you here, and I will then leave Francesca guide our session for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you all to be here again. I'll try to share my screen, hoping to make it right. Just a second, and I'll come back. I might have some trouble, but there we go. So thank you all to be here. As Christina said, it was such a great pleasure to be here with you on the last session. And for those of you who were not there, I'm Francesca, I live in Italy, and I always like to say that I scribble for food. That means that I do write for a living, and at the same time, I basically write and talk about food in the food industry. I'm mainly focused on collaborations and consultancies with companies that are very diverse, but they're all in the food sector. So for example, I collaborate with a publishing house just focusing on cookbooks and on food books. At the same time, I'm working with the GDOs and restaurants. So it is very, very interesting to understand how these very diverse realities and identities can actually use and share the same language. And that is exactly why we are here today, because I always like to start with these very powerful images, that is, products are all conversation somehow. So we talk about food. We really like to talk about it and to, communicate the way, communication is not just about promoting, it's not just about selling, but it's talking and, making the conversation going and understanding that there is something that you use and you are consuming, even when you're not at table, when you're not actually eating. And it's actually something that happens to any kind of product that you have around you, and not just as producer, but also as a consumer. Any single time that you point to something, you're actually talking about it. So there's actually a very great difference between just talking about something and, communicating it, because it is a great shift that is also very useful for us as producer, as communicators, that is from conversations to stories. What's actually a story? It might sound a little bit nerdy somehow, but A story is something that has a beginning and something that is going on and ending point. So usually in all our stories, we have a hero that could be our prince, that could be us doing something, an action on a diverse kind of scale, and we all have a goal. So what do we need to achieve our goal? We need something. It is truly interesting that the very first idea of storytelling, even before the idea of marketing, comes from a man, a very nerdy guy in the beginning of the 20th century from Russia, who collected all stories ever written and even spoken in the Russian culture and tradition, and said, you know what? With all this great diversity of stories, at the end of the day, you only have 5 main characters that are always engaged in 5 different actions. And that is the beginning of the idea of storytelling that we have both in academics and also in marketing. So I'd like to think about, I'd like to invite you to think about your products as something that is engaged in fairy tales. So what happens in our fairy tales? We might have a prince that wants to, free the princess or wants to marry a princess. There might be a fox who is hungry and wants to eat a grape. But it also might be you that willing to go to work, or you or your customer going to bake a cake. Where exactly your product fit in the story? The product is the tool, the magic tool that might be the magic sword that might enable you or the hero to achieve your goal. So for example, the prince needs a sword to fight the dragon and then to free the princess. Or you might desperately need coffee to go to work, or you might need some ingredients to bake a cake. So every single time the product that you have in front of you might be helpful to do something. So why thinking about products can make a great difference in the way you talk about it and the way it's perceived? It is because it is an empowerment to your hero, or to yourself, of course, to reach the goal and tell your story and to keep the story going. So the shift is, any single time that you are engaging with your customer, you're actually inviting not just to buy something, but to do something with the thing that they're buying. And it really makes a great difference in terms of language, because it's a different kind of invitation in every single space of communication available that you have. That might be your label, that might be your social media page, your Facebook page, or it might also be advertising anywhere, or even your website, of course. It could also be the way you approach people to engage with your product, that might be in tasting or something like that. So how could you actually make this conversation work? It is not just about, of course, your responsibility, but it might also be that this kind of conversation and story starts with your customer. So it's a two-way, it's a two-way starting point. The first one is, of course, up to you, and you pull the trigger with the conversation by showing customers what they can do with your product, how can they use it, and of course, why should they buy it? Because sometimes you have so many similar products on the shelves that can be useful to understand how your product is so special that can be used in a completely different way from the others. Also, why is it different? At the same time, the conversation might start on the way around, so from your customers. So it is extremely important to understand, to open up your ears to collect all feedbacks and questions, understand actually if they already found a way to use your product in different way that you wouldn't foresee in any single time of the path of the development of your product. And of course, since it's a conversation, so it's not just about a monologue, it is extremely important to understand how can you engage in the conversation with them, with a single consumer, but of course with a community, because that is one of the marvels of the digital area. Sometimes you can engage with a group of people by yourself, of course, as producers, but also to fit in a conversation that already exists, that is developed by other people interested in your product. So we'll very quickly find ways that we can create this kind of engagement, both from you as a starting point, but also from the consumer point of view. All these examples have something in common, that is the consumer is at the center. So it's how can we make sure that we create a conversation in a way that the consumer is always at the center, so that we do not consume, we do not create stories in a way that they end up by themselves. So it is great, to engage people even when they're not tasting your product, even when they're not already on point and maybe they don't know you yet. So the very first example is just content creation. You have so many different ways to talk about your products, not just about, pushing people to create content or just, to push people to buy your products. So how can you use them? You can create recipes, you can create tutorials, you can create tips and tricks, or, lists on good to know how, as we said before, we can use your product in different ways, or you can just use your product in ways that are already something that is in our everyday life, but is so fitting with the qualities of the thing that you're selling. These are just very few examples on how you can develop contents in ways that are totally different depending on your target, but also depending on your tone of voice, but also to spark out loud in a world of products that are similar to yours. These are contents that are developed on a cheesecake. This is a recipe of a cheesecake, and these are just 4 out of millions or trillions of examples that we can have on how you can actually develop content. The first one is just the very simple recipe with the list of ingredients and the methodology. The second one is an infographic. The third one is photo recipe, so the recipe step and described step by step. The fourth one might be a video. So according to your capacity, of course, according to your creativity, according to even your target, you can choose to create content in very different ways. Why is that important? It is because by showing people what they can do, you're already engaging them and getting into their everyday life. Content can be something that can be created and delivered on different platforms, also on different kind of shared audience. The first one can be just the content that you create on your platform, so on your website, on your social media. Another kind of content development and creation is branding content. So again, going on cheesecake, and in this case Philadelphia, which is a very popular cream cheese, you can decide to have your own personal website with all recipes that you want to develop with your products, but at the same time you can create co-branding content with, I don't know, in this case with Good Food, but also with other companies that can develop content for you. In this case, for example, with the cheesecake on Good Food, the recipe, in order to make it clear that it is something that is created and branded by you, and in order to have your name, of course, on the recipe, there are very sometimes tricky but also strong commercial agreements and contracts. So in order to make sure that the people that are developing content for you set the record straight and use it clearly, for in the right way for your customers, it is extremely important for you to make it clear with the company, to get exactly the point you want to communicate. It might also be tricky because it really has to fit your style, the style of your products, but also the style of the hub that is going to be delivered. So it is something to keep in mind anytime that you want to choose the right content, the right hub for your product. And hopefully, any single time that you're getting super important, super famous, and super viral, you can rely on the content that is generated by users. So you're gonna have millions and trillions of recipes and tips and tricks and tutorials and videos that are created with your ingredient, with your product. Why is that important? It is, as we said before, first because you want to make sure that they're using it in ways that you didn't foresee before. So it might be useful also to develop your product and your content. At the same time, it's great to understand, how this is already, I would say, is this permeating in everyday life. So how people are reacting on the product once they are at home. So not just in the phase of buying and purchasing at the supermarket. So going very deeper in content creation, you might want to engage people on a very textual level with a CTA. What's a CTA? It is a call to action. Call to actions are all these catchy phrases and words that you can find at the very end of captions of social media, or even your website, or even your I don't know, newsletter. So it is something that you are using to invite people, to ask people to do something and seduce. At the very end of it, it is also a way, an intermediate step to ask people to buy your product. But as we said before, you're actually asking them to do something with your product. What's the main difference is that call to actions can be focused on the action that you can do with your product, but it might also be the action that you have to do on your digital platform in order to find out more, to go and have access to your content. So it might be on the first example, try out your product and your recipes, try it out, taste it, or this is something that is very, very classical in the very old style advertising, I would say, when, I don't know, with all the posters and the billboards you might have in town, or even in some kind of communication platform like the label, such as the label, where you don't have that many, that much space. You can actually still use a call to action on that. So just try it, or taste it, or try out the new flavor. I don't know. Whenever you have something that is digital, because of the nature of the essence of any digital platform, that is a mediation between you above the screen and then the world beyond the screen, even your call to actions might be somehow mediated, because it is not, of course, something that you can use to try directly and immediately the product, but it is a tool, meaning your laptop, meaning your smartphone, or even the newsletter or the social media post, to find out more about your product. So I'll show you two examples where call to actions are usually very, very powerful and useful. There are newsletters and captions. Call to actions on newsletters are extremely useful to drive people from a platform that they usually use, such as an email inbox, to your website. And in these letters, call to actions are extremely recognizable because they are those who fill the buttons and have hyperlink in them. So anytime you have a button, you want to invite people to push that button in order to go and browse your website, or to go and browse, I don't know, a purchase page, because maybe the very final call to action might be go and purchase directly on an e-commerce page. Here are just few examples of newsletters. There are, something that I usually receive. So you can see in the very first example that you have a button, which is here. This is a newsletter about an anti-food waste app that might, that is very popular here in Europe, I would say, but also in the US, to collect food that is unsold in supermarkets, but also in restaurants. So their very peculiar CTA in this newsletter is help us fighting waste. Which is, also very engaging in a way that you're already pushing people to do something even before downloading the app or buying anything from the to repair waste. But at the same time, you also have another call to action over here, as you can see on the very bottom line, which is just click here. Because by clicking there, you can download even more content. It is not super recognizable among all the other words, because it is just in a different color. It might suggest that it is a button, but somehow newsletters are always useful to set records straight with these huge buttons, because depending on even considering all the other content devices that you have, newsletters are the only one with your website maybe that have these very clear buttons to push. In the second one, you just have, get the recipe, which is in a different, the same font, but bigger and underlined. And you can scribble down something very interesting, or something blinking and amusing in the caption. But then the very point of this newsletter is to get people on your website. So of course you can you're just asking them to get the recipe and by going on the website. And at the same time, even this very, very simple third example, you just have a button that is read more, find out more. So you can use it anytime that your caption is very short and it's something extremely required in newsletters. You can also use it when newsletters captions have the 3 dots, which is kind of old style, but it's super, super interesting. It's still very used and popular because maybe the phrase is not ended. So in order to find out how this ends, the story ends, you have a button to push. What is interesting in newsletters is that you have very huge spaces that are buttons. So for example, a very good tip of advice that I can share with you, a very best practice, is to make all the pictures becoming buttons. And it's something that you can do with any kind of newsletter platform that you use. But it's something very specific and technical on this kind of tool. Another way to have call to actions, to make call to actions worth it, are on captions on social media. So usually in order to to connect and to engage with people is to get all your kind of digital content very correlated, very linked one to another. So in order to make them jump from one picture to on the social media to your website or to your platform of e-commerce, it is extremely useful to use your call to actions. Of course, you cannot just use a call to actions in captions because you're not really describing or amusing people with just the picture or just the text. So you might need a little bridge from the picture to the call to action with a caption that is somehow descriptive, or it could be something informative when you have special offers or when you have special discounts. But in order to make people find out more, you really need your call to action. And you can use it in many different ways. It might be posing a question, and then from posing the question, you already give the answer by saying, hey, the answer is on our website, so find out more there. It is really, really interesting how you can play and juggle with words in order to captivate people, to catch their attention. Another way to engage with your customers is to find out people that are, I would say, your voice and your face. And I'm talking about ambassadors. And I would say that ambassador is a very contemporary term that collects both the very old style testimonials in, in campaigns, but also what is the new wave of influencers. What is the only thing to be to make sure to get the right influencer or the right voice or face for your brand is to pick it properly, to make it very consistent with your content. And this is something that can go on a scale from something that is extremely famous and may also be not connected and linked with your product or with the area of your product. It could also be, I don't know, an actor, a singer that has never been, known outside in the outside world as a foodie. On the other side, you can choose someone who is extremely competent, extremely expert in your realm, but at the same time, there might be the danger that is not well known from the outside world, from the people who are not really interested in your product. So depending on this, on the combination of these two, points, from someone who is famous but not consistent with your word to someone who is an expert but is not extremely famous, of course, there's a huge world of people who can be engaged. The choice of the people, the person, of the influencer, of the chef, or of the star that you're gonna pick, it really depends on the consistency of the product, but also on the target of the people you are willing to engage. And still remember that these are the people who might also be, and I mean the audience might also be people who know your ambassador, who already know your influencer, who already know your chef, but don't know yet about your product. So in that case, it is extremely important to choose someone who is already a very, famous face, but it's also the face of your brand. So make sure to be consistent in choosing the right person. Another very interesting and fun tool that you can use to engage with your audience is gamification, which is something that already existed in the offline world, especially in food. That is, an experience. So it might be somehow fun to, engage with tasting, with special dinners. This idea of game exploded with Instagram especially, but also with all kind of social media and all kind of digital tools that you have out there. So gamification is make something playful. Just as a play, the outside world, you make it fun with very specific devices and contents created to be engaging, because that is the beauty of plays. They are engaging with the people, with the actors and players. So in this case, I just gone through a very quick, I'm sorry if some of the pictures that I collected are not are jumping somehow, but I hope all the others will stay. I'm just showing you some of the functionalities, the main functionalities that you can use as your play tools, especially on Instagram, in Instagram stories. The first one are polls. These are all, I would like to say, they are all free buttons that you can use as stickers. Whenever you want to find out stickers to, add on your story, you can find all these polls and questions and any other kind of device that are just free and are up to you, to use and to develop content around them. So polls are simple questions with two possible answers. So you're inviting people to make a choice. Usually you can use polls to, understand I don't know, the taste of people, what they prefer, but also you can use stories, post stories to create teams. So for example, you have in the very last slide, you have team for frosting or team for crumbs, because these also could also be helpful for you to understand which is the product that might sell the most when you're developing a new product, when you want to put out outside in the outside world your product. After polls, you have quizzes. So quiz is another very fun functionality because you're still posing a question and you have different answers, possible answers. The thing about quizzes is that once you click as a user on an answer, you're gonna have the right option and the wrong option. So make sure that even when you do something that is not, as an academic or an historical quiz, you're not making out something that is quirky or might be something that is, truly appealing to people that could accept them when they don't get the right answer, So it is very, very useful to use it in a very ironic way, or also an informative way when you want to play out with, the story of your product, with curiosities about your product. But just make sure that if people click on the wrong answer, they don't get upset. Because the point about quizzes or any kind of Instagram stories is to keep, to make people engage, even in the next slide. So another great options about stories is questions. So you're just asking people questions and they can fill up a blank form in order to get an answer. This could actually be useful to, anytime that you have very, very different and broad kind of answers. And this, you can show answers, as you can see in the very first slide, It is interesting because when, you're actually asking people to push out stories for you, to push out, tips, to make their time valuable, to make their experience valuable. It could be extremely useful if you're asking something on the product that has been already out in the market for a long time, and you can ask people to, you know, share their stories about the product and the way they use them, about their recipe, about, you know, special tricks. And of course, it's truly rewarding to people anytime that they are republished, because they get that the way that they're using their idea is valuable, and it actually could be useful to other people around. Another example about gamification in stories and Instagram stories is this very fun graphic templates that you can create with very simple apps like Canva, such as, I don't know, even Photoshop, if you're actually confident with it. And they're usually something that people can download and upload very easily. And they can be customizable with all the different Instagram stickers directly on the app. So these are just very simple examples that I put out from the internet about rapid questions on food. Would you rather eat pancake or baguette, chocolate or matcha, whatever? Or you can just complete and fill up the form on your favorite foods. Or you can also ask people to do challenges, whatever. But they're all things that are very, very easy to reproduce and very, very easy to consume. Also, because remember, their Instagram in general, social media, but especially Instagram stories, they are very quick kind of consumption, because they last for no more than 15 seconds, and they just last in your timeline for 24 hours, unless of course you save them in the highlight. Another way to engage with your customers in a way that it is of course rewarding to them on a digital platform is with contests and challenges, and also giveaways. I just made 3 very quick examples about, for example, giveaways. It is a very simple action it can be a picture with the final reward. And in the caption, you're just asking people to follow your page or to tag someone. And then at the very end of the contest, you just pick a random winner. It is extremely important to make sure that you can actually do giveaways in your country, because, for example, here in Italy, you cannot do giveaways unless they go under the national lottery. I'm not very sure about the implication of it, but since it's a game with a final reward, with a prize, they really have to go under this kind of law and make a contract with them. In other countries, such as, I don't know, the UK, but even the US, it is way easier. So you can just pull out giveaways in the outside world and pick your random winner. What's the point about giveaways? They're extremely easy to create, because they are also extremely easy for people to engage, because they're you're just asking them to tag a person or to follow up your page. They could also be extremely useful for you to grow your Instagram page or Facebook page. What is not extremely interesting about giveaways is that there's a very low content creation, and they're not extremely engaging. So because the action is so simple that it kind of ends up there. So you don't really have the possibility, the chance to make it grow or to make it evolve somehow. That is something that you can actually do with the other kind of contest. For example, in contest, you can pull out a very simple action, such as just make a cake with our product, or do something, or create a recipe with our product, and then at the very end of the contest, we're going to pick up the best for us. In the case of contest, it is extremely important to set the rules very clearly in the outside world, so that anytime that a person could they really have to understand that they are going to participate in something that has this specific kind of set of rules. Because otherwise, in the case of, for example, the giveaways that are so free, you have to understand, when you're not applying to the rules and appealing to the rules, why you didn't win. because it's so easy to, you know, to get angry, especially in the digital area. What's nice about the contest is you also have to make sure that there's going to be a panel, a group of, you know, people who can be, you know, the CEO of your company. It can be, you know, even random people from a jury that are going to decide the winner. Because in this case, there's this kind of intermediation of people deciding the winner. You know, it is not just about a random winner, picking a random winner. What is good about contest is that you're going to have a high level of content creation that could be extremely useful for you and for your company, but it's also extremely time and money consuming if you want to make it, you know, proper, because it really is screening all the recipes and screening all the pictures, for example, that they're going to send you. Another way to engage with people is to create challenge and to pull out challenges in the outside world. So you're asking people to do an action that is not going to be judged, but is just, you know, asking them to complete this action on their own. And you're going to ask them to nominate someone else to do the same kind of action. This is very useful if you want to go viral, but at the same time, you're not going to collect a great, you know, diversity of contents just because you're asking them to repeat the same kind of action. So we're going to now shift on the other side of our spectrum, I would say, and I'd like to introduce a chapter that is more focused on the action coming from your customers, you know, from the people who might already have experience or might not have already experience of your products. Feedbacks are extremely important for you to grow, because somehow even complaints, they are, you know, somehow very difficult to manage when they're super harsh, might actually be useful because they make you understand that something is not going extremely well, or maybe you're not advertising your product in the right way. So any kind of feedback that could be positive or could be negative, just try to look at it as a way to improve, which is somehow hard, especially when there are negative feedback, but I can assure you it's going to be extremely useful for your company to grow.
Can I
yes, Christina.
I have one idea, Francesca, that I heard from a coffee producer from Brazil, and is that for him it was also very much important to collect feedback for the buyers. So when he was collecting feedback of what it was happening within the cooperative, he was in his conversation with potential buyers, when they, for example, they knew this potential buyer in 2010, but then later within that later, for example, they ask a question like, how has been a specific engagement with consumers, how has been these samples or this specific topic, and then perhaps in that moment they didn't even have quite an answer, or the comment was negative, but 2 years after they were able to show that change. So look at content collection or feedback collection not as something for now, but as something that can be useful for you in the future, and you can do before and after at the same time.
That's actually great. That's actually the point on even time management in giving feedbacks, because somehow, well, I would say that most of the time you might not already have the answer to the question that they're asking or to the feedback they're giving, but it is also extremely important that you give the right answer. So just take your time to collect all the information that you have, and of course, just write down something to say, hey, we're working on it, and thank you, for sharing, because it is extremely important for us to for yourself to understand why, the dynamic of the thing they're asking. So before doing that, it might be extremely useful for you to monitor and to map out all the different platform and interfaces where people could give their feedbacks. They might be internal. So for example, with internal, I mean your Facebook page or your website or even your email, any kind of point of contact that people could have with you, they're a potential interface. And for internal, I mean, all the interfaces that are created by you. And of course, now in the digital area, we have so many different other external interfaces. So places where people could leave a trace and could leave a feedback. That could be, you know, social media, so their pages, they could be forums, they could be I don't know, even websites that are specifically created to ask people for feedback. They're very, very popular in situations and on products and services that offers an experience somehow. So it might be, you know, hotels, it might be flights, it might be restaurants. But at the same time, they're also very popular. They're getting more and more popular with just products. Once you already have your map, and also you understand the language and the dynamic of the different monitoring, just get in touch. Anytime that someone leaves a trace, and just make sure to be there and say, hey, thank you for your feedback. Just make sure that they understand that you are collecting your feedback, so that their action is somehow meaningful. It is not something, you know, screaming in the outside world and not being collected. At the same time, it is not just about saying, replying by saying, got it, thank you for that. Just find a way that is consistent with your tone of voice, with the thing that you want to communicate, and also with the situation, of course. Just tell them how this kind of feedback is going to impact your company, or is going to even help your business to improve. I'd like to focus more on this part of, you know, giving feedback, because it's extremely important in the customer care experience. Also because this kind of moment is still part of the experience involved with your product. It's still part of this story that you're creating around your product. And because it's also the story of your brand and the way, you know, you are interfacing, you are interacting with people, your customers. So anytime that someone writes down, as we said before, just get in touch and say, hey, thank you for your feedback. But of course, anytime that you don't have the right answer, just take your time. Make sure to write it down though. So say we're, you know, collecting your feedback, and we are find out, you know, we'll operate to find out more and be back to you as soon as possible. And just reply when you're ready. You can reply in, you know, any way you want, and it's truly okay to switch from public to private. This is something very, very useful to, you know, to understand and to keep in mind when you're engaging in public spaces, even in, of course, digital spaces such as Facebook walls, such as forums, such as, I don't know, forums even on your website. So any kind of digital trace that other people can see, you know, the feedbacks that are posted on your screen, that are, you know, on your page, that are linkable to your company, but can be seen to not just by the person that is writing, but to a different kind of audience. Also because any action and any feedback that you give them, it can be seen from also other people. So whenever you want to switch from public to private for many kind of different reasons, it could be because the answer you're gonna give is not super appealing, because you just want, you know, to apologize, because you want to also give a long answer, and very long answers are not the right place for, you know, for Facebook comments. So in that case, it will be useful to switch to private. You can definitely do that, but at the same time, make clear in the public space that you are switching privately. You can reply just by saying, hi, thank you very much for giving share your feedback with us. We're gonna answer with a private message, with a direct answer to give you further assistance. Thank you. So that other people can see that you're actually going on with the, you know, with the case, and you're actually caring, so that they can expect that anytime something similar might happen to them, you're gonna do the same, because you're caring. And another thing that you can do in order to engage customers is to create communities. why is it different to all the other kind of actions that we saw before? That's because the other actions involve a relationship that is between you and one single user. In this case, communities is a group of, of users, of consumers or potential consumers. And again, this is just boosted in a very explosive way by digital platforms and forums especially, and of course, social media. It is quite difficult to map out all the different Fanbases platforms that you have around you. What makes a fan-based platform a fan-based platform? So a place for a community to grow. Just make sure that all the different actions for interactions can be seen and traced, and also used by other people, not just by you replying to other persons or just by a single user replying to you. Anytime that you have this kind of, I would say, democracy of power of speech, when anyone can do the same kind of actions, that is exactly the fan-based platform you are looking for. Of course, in this kind of platforms, there are different kind of actors. That can be you, or could be other moderators that can act in different ways, that might have or not have different kind of privileges to take, to speak up or not to speak up. But anytime you can see that anyone just applying or logging in can do the same actions of other people, that is a platform, that is a forum. And of course, forums can vary from one country to another. You can use Facebook groups in the same way, but you can also activate, yourself groups in your same website, creating private areas for people to interact. You also have very even though somehow it's tricky, I would say, you also have very different platforms for chats, such as WhatsApp or Telegrams, where you can use broadcasting groups I don't know, if you want to create a very narrow group of VIP consumers to give them special offers and privileges, that could also be something that you can use. Map out all the different kind of platforms you want to use and choose them according to the target you want to reach. At the same time, your capacity to keep the conversation going and also to monitor the conversation, because somehow it might also be that groups and communities already exist, but they are going on their own. And there is something that you cannot actually, I would say, control, and you don't really have the power to use your voice, because it might be seen as an intrusion, because whenever it's something so specific and so spontaneous, when people are activating a conversation on you, it is not super nice to show that you want to conduce and to manage the conversation. You can pop up in the conversation, of course, and say, hey, thank you so much for all this kind of great content. You can pop up by keep the conversation going and to make it, going in different ways, I would say, but at the same time, you're there as a guest. The examples that we were making before are all examples where the community is created by you and you're the host. So in that case, you might set up the rules and give the right space to, even different kind of contents, different kind of communities, if you want to make them feel special and do something more for you, I don't know. You still have the power to enact and boost interaction. And also in these cases where the community is created by you, you also have the power to be the moderator, because you're setting up the rules. So in all these very different kind of situations, just make sure that people can actually have the power to interact with you, and just make sure to be there as someone who is not perceived as someone hostile, as someone who is pushing the conversation too much in that kind of directions, because you're just there to create a conversation and to keep the conversation going.
Yes,
so maybe I would say
a couple
yes.
Sorry, no, before you wrap it up, first, no, because I think that this last one that you share on the communities, I think that for food companies, an easy way of creating a communities would be recipes, like chocolate lovers from Jamaica, and then people sharing their recipes, and I think that for content collection works out very well. But there's also other ideas that have come to my mind as you are mentioning this from other entrepreneurs we have here. I know, for example, we have Janet that she did her own granola. So, you know, like something like morning lovers, how you wake up and what are your morning rituals. It's another way of creating a community that perhaps is not only on food, but it's more on that ritual that is connected with her product. Or another example I had is, for example, for coconut, no, and for coconut oil, or beauty routines. No, so try to be also creative when you think about a community that you can create around your product. That doesn't have to be only about recipes or direct use, but can be also about the moment and the connection that people can have with your product.
It is indeed. So in that case, yes, they're all just, you know, think about all these different kind of situations and platforms as opportunities, because anytime that you're engaging with people, they really want, it is a great opportunity to make them talk about your product in a ways that are totally, you know, new for you, and that could actually fit perfectly with your content, with your identity, with your product. So just let them talk and talk with them. You know, the great thing about digital area is that you can connect with so many different people, and you can find out in a very spontaneous way that people are already using your product. They're already, you know, sharing an interest in the way, in the sense of communities. So it is just great to trace out all these actions and also to enact these actions in order to make the conversation going. And I guess that's it. But I'd really like to, you know, to see if there's any question of someone who is willing to share their experience on that.
So we do have one question while the others start to type. I hope there are more questions from Wendy. Wendy says, I'm in the process of launching a giveaway on Instagram, and one of the rules is to follow the page. However, how do I speak to the people who are already following the page?
You can ask them for a double action. So you can actually ask them to follow the page and then tag a friend in order to, you know, make sure that the person that they are tagging maybe is not, or she is not following your page, and you're still, you know, in this kind of way growing up your fan base. So this is very, you know, common on giveaways, to ask for a double action.
Good. Then we have an advice that
I hope it was clear enough.
Yes, Umeda.
Okay, thanks, Wendy.
Yes, Umeda was sharing with us the advice that when you're selling on Amazon, you might get feedback there, and you should make sure to respond to that on Amazon. Well, we received other questions.
True.
I also wanted to point out about the call of action, Francesca, that you shared with us. I think that was very great as an input. With Tamia, we started with Tamia Carey once she was speaking about Facebook and a bit of about content. You cannot hear, so I'm not sure if everyone can hear. Helen might have had some troubles. Just let me know. Just that last comment, it was about the call to action that on a previous webinar series point we had was I remember Tamia saying to make sure, you know, like to ask people, you know, like to engage. And in that sense, someone was asking, you know, like, should I ask them to buy the product? And she answered, yes, you know, like you should do it. And I think that Francesca today showed us that there's different ways of asking, you know, like, and perhaps, of course, according to your style and your brand, it's not that you're always going to put there, buy my product, buy here, buy there, but there's other ways of engaging, like, you know, like try our products, read more. So always making sure we, even within that caption, for example, on Instagram, or creating that engagement. good. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. In the meantime, I will ask you to answer kindly our feedback poll. As we've been doing this over the last sessions as well. We would kindly like to understand your thoughts on the session, receive any also other ideas of sessions that you would like. Next week, no, look, we have another comment from Umeda. To penetrate TV, there might be cooking shows or competitions, send your products. And then we have Kamala that is saying some persons are fearful of negative comments and their lack of time to respond in a timely manner to choirs. What is your encouragement to such persons? Francesca, can you hear me? I'm not sure if it's that I'm having some internet problems.
So I'll briefly comment something on what Umeda said, and it's extremely true. Anytime you have cooking shows, of course, they're going to use the products. At the same, I feel a little freeze. Maybe your voice is a little freeze, but I'll just reply very quickly to Umeda. And saying that, yes, of course, you can send out products for TV shows. At the same time, it might be that in order to ask them to give feedback, you just have to make it to do it rightly. So anytime that you have, I don't know, it might also be an Instagram or a Facebook post, and at the end of it, the call to action might be give your feedback. It could also be, you know, sending us your thoughts on your website, just making the right call to action to enact the right action, which is giving feedbacks. At the same time, whenever you're asking for feedback, make sure to reply, because otherwise you're just, you know, collecting information and people might feel like they're not spending their time rightly, because as you said, they might feel like the giving feedbacks might be a time waste.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So it's the time for us to wrap up.
Yes.
We'll see you next week, next Thursday, for our last session. So we will be waiting for all of you to join us for a last time. Next session would be on Instagram, and we will be having one entrepreneur from the region, from Trinidad and Tobago, joining us in this presentation. Thank you very much for everyone to join, for the questions, and for Francesca to all these knowledge, tips, and advices.
Thank you all. It was great. I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.